Welcome to By All Means Necessary Real Recovery Talk. My name is Marco, and I'm a grateful recovering addict. And we have a very special guest in the studio today who is actually my best friend, and he's the hardest fucking guest to get on this podcast.
Not the hardest.
Yeah, you are. You're the hardest. This is episode 17. This is my best friend, Chef Greg. He has 7 years clean. And just to really quick, this guy has done literally everything for me and my family, not to get smushy because he'll probably start crying, but he's been there for us through different situations, surgeries, moves, this, that, the other, third. And he's a solid real one. And he has an amazing story of what he went through and how he has actually stayed clean through everything that he's been through in terms of prison, and he's going to tell you the story. So welcome, man.
Thanks, brother.
How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
All right. So
I don't think I'm the hardest guy to get on the
yeah, you
podcast.
are the hardest. And you got a ticket before you got here,
well,
too.
Don't start telling him that.
It's all right.
John Travolta to come in. He probably would have been a little harder. Nah, thanks for having me, Marco.
You're
I love
welcome.
you and your family, bro.
Thank you, man. So with the accent, where are you from? Where were you born?
Gloucester, Massachusetts, the
Okay.
Fighting Fisherman, baby. That was the name of it. Small little fishing town, hard-working town. It's gentrified now. It's not the same as the way when I grew up. Tough little rumble town.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know, you want me to tell you a little bit about my story?
Yeah, tell me your story, man.
All right,
Open
is this
up.
real?
It works.
Are you famous?
I'm not famous though. I'm not. Yeah.
Anybody watching us?
There's people outside here that watch us.
All right, well, here.
Ariana is doing the editing. She
Thank God
watches
for
us.
Ariana. She
She's the best.
legitimizes this operation.
Yeah.
Thank you. I like your new hat.
I appreciate it, man.
Jesus, you're balling. Everything's real.
Everything works.
Too. Everything works. All right. So I don't know. I grew up in like a real middle class family, a loving, caring family, and
No crazy shit happening?
nah,
Really?
yeah, just me. I was like a middle child. I don't know. I always tell this story. God rest my mother's soul. My brother and sister get a kick out of this if they ever see it. So one day, I always felt a little different. This is just kind of a cute story. It has nothing to do with my addiction or anything like that. But this is how I knew something was wrong along the way. They were watching all these old films they used to watch on 8mm, I think, on the refrigerator at night, family films. And I would see my brother learning how to walk right from my father to my mother. And he would walk back and forth and they'd be so cute. And someone's filming it. And my sister, the same thing. So afterwards, I'm like, hey, where are my pictures? How did I learn how to walk? And my mother says, well, we moved from Madison Street to Liberty Street. You fell down the stairs. You cried. So we went down and got you. We didn't catch it on film. And that's kind of the story of my life. I kind of swept under the rug.
Okay.
And I literally always just didn't feel, I don't know, a part of.
Right.
I know my family loves me. I love them.
Right.
And there was something inside me, the disease of addiction. I didn't know it then, but I just never felt the same. I never felt comfortable in my own
You
skin.
felt off?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the first time I blazed one up and just was off and running. I used different substances along the way, and I always made I would always just be changing friends with the substance. So I never had lifelong friends, you know. And that was the way it went for me. And I knew it wasn't right. I had opened a couple of businesses and did all right, and I'd reel it back in, and just enough to not lose everything. And then I got a family, and then I'd reel it back in, but I could never stay. Kept it reeled in, and
You were the chef of all these businesses, right? Or
a couple of they were independent restaurant, and then a food truck, right. Just a good hustle along the way, and like the old saying goes, I had a real asshole for a boss for 35 years, and I worked for myself. And so I didn't know how to fill out an application. And I just always gravitated towards that. And as far as growing up in that town, most kids would be in the church going to Sunday mass, and I'd be down the field, moving the stakes for the football players, the flag football players, which was just like an adult drinking party. And I just gravitated to that life. They used to give me cards. I'd hustle them. I don't know if back in the day they had like pick 4, pick 10, and you get 25% of whatever you brought in. And I was just a young buck, and I just gravitated to that life. I loved it, the gambling rackets, all of that. And I just like, I didn't gravitate towards school. I have a brother that graduated from Harvard. My sister's a graduate, all successful. And it just wasn't me. I don't know. And,
you like the streets. You like the hustle.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's crazy. Like I'd look for it. And then I just couldn't stop. I'd reel it in and then fall apart again. And I could never stay stopped. And I had a lot of pride in the beginning, so I would never be like too proudful to like have any of the businesses fail. So I didn't want to come home with my, between my legs and be like a beaten dog. So I would, rather than have my tail between my legs, I would, pull it in a little bit, and I was still capable of doing that. And then one day I got stuck on the using side of addiction, and I couldn't get out.
Okay.
And that's basically the gist of it. By then I had a house, a kid, and a wife. Within a year of getting out of one of the county bids, they were gone. They couldn't take it anymore. And
she left you.
Yeah.
She took she left you, and she took the son and left you.
And he was old enough to make his own decision. He stayed for a while. I'm like, good. She said, don't worry. I got a 2-bedroom townhouse because I know he'll be, in case he wants to move with me. I said, well, he picked me, and he was about 18 or 19 at the time. And he looked at me with disdain and said, I'm only staying here because I think you're going to end up you're going to end up dying.
Yeah, that's what he said to you.
Yeah. And I was just like, that's why you chose to stay here? He's like, yeah. He didn't last a week. I think it was maybe 3 weeks, It just went real bad.
And what happened after that?
It just progressively got worse. At first, this is how crazy the disease of addiction is for me. At first, I thought like, oh, what a relief. They're gone. I can do what I want now. Isn't that fucking crazy? And I was like, I really felt like a source of relief. And then I was smoking crack and doing dope. And I don't know if anybody's ever done coke, but sometimes you get a little tweaked out. So I had blankets. I had blackout shades at first, and then blankets on top of them and on top of them. And
because I
just felt like a little
everyone was watching you.
Yeah. And it didn't end well. I think I had a couple young girls, and I was hustling, slinging a little bit. And
in the house with you?
Yeah, right after they left. And they would do errands or drop stuff off. And a year to the date, I was up for about 8 days, like a little bit crazed out. 8 days, no sleep. I think I ate about 3 pounds of Mike and Ike's in the course of those 3 days. I couldn't really fathom anything else. And I hear this glass break, and I was like, what the hell was that? Some bastard kid must have thrown a rock through my window. Now, this is crazy, but I'm going to just say this, and I'm not bragging, but it was like a little cul-de-sac of a street. And to my left was the state representative or state senator. And across the street on the corner was the fire chief of that city. And then right across the street was an IBM executive. And to the right was Karen Box and Lumber, the owner.
And then
so
you.
it was all single.
And then you.
And then me. Alone for a year. I hear the glass break, and I go over, and I like peek out the window. First, I got to get the blanket off, then the blackout shade. And by the time I do all that, I look, and I was like, wow, you got to get some sleep. And they're like, what? I'm like, I don't know. It looks like downtown Baghdad. And they were like, what? And all of a sudden, I hear another thing break. And I look out again, and it wasn't no kid throwing a rock. They were like masked AK-47 government wheeling thing. And they had this black tank in front of them, and then proceeded to like shell the house with percussion grenades and flash bombs. I mean, I just didn't know what the hell.
Percussion grenades and flash bombs.
Yeah, and I didn't even know this town had a black tank. That thing was pretty cool rolling down that neighborhood. So my neighbors were really, really, come to find out for a year before that, the other neighbor across the street, the IBM exec, let them film me coming and going. And they were in there filming.
They did surveillance on you for a year.
Yeah, they had a case open for a year. So needless to say, I thought I was the neighbor of the year. That's how infected I was with the disease, and I thought it was a pillar of the community. But
they had like SWAT. What departments were they?
They were the DEA, the sheriffs.
Okay, there's 2.
Marshals.
3.
I don't know. There was some alphabet combinations that I didn't even know existed at the time prior to going deep. There was another one called Homeland Security.
4.
And then the city of Manchester.
5.
I shouldn't have mentioned that shit. I hope this show isn't very popular because I really don't care to share this with the world. But anyway, yeah, there were probably 5. I don't know
5 different agencies.
There were 5 that I remember, yeah. Yeah.
So what happened when they broke in? What happened?
They proceeded to shell the house until all the glass and the walls were down. Not the walls, the sills of the doors and stuff like that. So it was just like us looking out naked, the 2 girls, and I was just like, that's, this is the serious part of it now. I mean, I'm glad I can laugh about what I went through, but this is the truth of the matter. I had been slinging for a little while, and I felt like heat, and I thought, maybe you just need to get a little more rest. Maybe it's just cocaine psychosis, just like when I thought a kid had broke the window, like it was all real. But the most realist thing I could think of was not that my house was being bombed or shelled. A month before, I had put this little slug, so if I did get arrested again, I was going to send that up my ass so I'd have something in the tank. And that's the serious part of it. My house is in disarray. I've got and that with these flash bombs and percussion grenades, those things are no joke. I had one cheek on the bed and one cheek off, and that's all I could do was obsess about getting to that slug, and it retards your nervous system, and I couldn't move, but that's all I could think about was getting that slug and sending it.
So you can have dope when you go to jail.
Yeah, but I couldn't move.
But you couldn't move.
Nope. Those bombs went off, and that shit really worked.
What did they do with you when they got you? What happened?
That's where the journey began, I guess.
What is that? You went to prison?
I went to county jail, and I remember it was a couple weeks into it. I was probably 120 pounds starving, and my first commissary for this trip was there, and it was ready to go. And the funny thing about it was the cop says B&B, like bed and book, and I'm like, yeah, right. Nobody's bailing my ass out. Like, this gig is over.
Yeah.
And he said, if you don't go now, we're going to take you. And I said, nobody came to bail me. I don't even have bail. He said, go down there. And one of the cops took some mercy on me. He cut my band. I'm like, yo, I'm really going home. I had been there a bunch of times, many times, doing these weekend stints and years, single years there, county years. And he cut my band. He goes, you know what's going on? I'm like, nah, I know my canteen's up there and I want to go eat. And he said, those are federal agents. They picked your case up. And I was like, damn, I don't know what I did. Yeah, and I was a little shook. And I mean, nothing could stop me. I just was like so infected with it. Like, I honestly thought they had the wrong person. When the cops were all there with masks on, I literally said to them, you guys are in big trouble. Now I'm walking on broken glass. There's nothing left to the walls. And I got handcuffed, and the girls are handcuffed. And I said to the cops, you are in big trouble. And they're like, we're in big trouble? And I said, yeah, you got the wrong house. I'm suing you. And I meant it. And I just told you who my neighbors were. Yeah. Like, how the fuck does that get that distorted in my mind? It's the disease of addiction. It swallowed me up.
The quantity of what you were doing, like,
just my train of thought, it wasn't very good. My thought process was and I couldn't, and I believed it. And I come to find out, I might have made a phone call out like, yo, make sure we're going to sue these people for doing this. And they're like, what? I thought nobody knew what I was doing. The good addict. Nobody knows what I'm doing in that bathroom. Yeah. Yeah. So I had been sick of myself for a long, long time before they did that, before I got arrested. Like, I had been sick of myself, and finally society is the brunt of it, the gist of it. And I'd like to say my journey started there, but I didn't come into NA. I do NA, by the way. I don't know if I told you, but
no, you didn't mention that. But
yeah, okay. But I'm a card-carrying member of NA, no matter what
Narcotics Anonymous.
Yeah, Narcotics Anonymous. Okay. And so I lost my train of thought there for a second. There's a mosquito in here. I just, but I'm not going to hold it against you. Anyway, So I'd like to say my journey, like I walked in to NA, but that's not the case. Like I just told you, like my right to use was taken away violently with automatic weapons. It wasn't a choice,
right?
You know?
Yeah.
I'd like to say I stopped them, but I didn't. I ended up catching a habit in prison. But when I got out, while I was away, my son had a kid, got married, and now the baby's 2, my only grandson. I'm like, maybe if I just could stay out long enough to meet them, if he'll let me. And I went only because this cop, this PO said, listen, I want you to, first she said, I'll see you every Tuesday. And I had talked to my other friends and they were like, nah, once a month. So I said, the first Tuesday every month? She said, no, every Tuesday. I have no illusions I'll be putting you back in shortly. So I was like, what? And she gave me a piece of paper and she said, get signatures. And for whatever reason, I didn't forge it. And I went to AA or NA. And it was because I was on foot and it was up north and it was freezing that I walked to this noontime meeting.
Yeah.
And in spite of myself, like, I didn't even know if it would work or anything, but I definitely, I didn't have nothing else going on. I was literally staying in a glorified crack house, shooting gallery, rooming house. There was a lot of drugs and paraphernalia around. And I was on a strict urine. And I just didn't want to go back. And I wanted to stay out long enough to maybe even build a little relationship with my grandson. And I didn't know how I was going to do that. I didn't know how I could stay clean. I never could do it my whole adult life. And I just kept walking to that meeting to get that damn signature to go see that lady every Tuesday. Every day. Yeah. And I don't know, I'd see people smiling. I'll tell you this, I've been to some real dark places, either copping dope and stuff. Like I've seen a lot of nasty shit. And I never was so scared in my life as walking into that first meeting. At the noontime, yep, I was shook. Guy tried to come up and hug me. I'm like, yo, what the fuck are you doing? Like I was out of my mind. I was petrified. I kept my head down and I could tell you what everybody's shoes were because most of the same cast of characters were at the noontime meeting. And I knew, and I'd be like, wow, those are pretty hot. Like I ain't seen those kind of shoes before. And
but were you just listening?
Yeah, I was just sitting there.
Like, were you really trying to retain what was?
No.
You weren't?
I was just trying to just shut my mind down for a minute. Like I didn't know what my next play was going to be. I was just beaten sufficiently. I had nothing else to do. And for that hour, I felt like I had something to do. But I wasn't. I was trying. And then about 2 weeks into it, I used again. And just started crying in that rooming house. And I was just like, man, like, is this ever going to stop? And it was Suboxone. I mean, I hate to name anything because I know that some stuff helps other people, but that was the choice, a drug of choice in the prison system because it was consistently regulated. So I had I made a play for a guy that was in the prison halfway house down the street, and I got a half of it, and I did it and felt bad, but I went there thinking, all right, well, at least I'm out of this situation. So when I got to the NA meeting at noontime, because I was sick of walking there, I was like, all right, then I tried. So I'll just go to the PO Tuesday and tell her I honestly tried. That was a Sunday, a Saturday night, and Sunday was the Super Bowl. Sunday's my clean date, February 4th, So I went and I just went and said, got the white key tag, and I thought they were going to say, all right, well, just, give it a month and then come back and try again. But they all clapped and said, keep coming back. I had nothing else to do. So I was like, the first thing I tried to do is sit still. I sat on my hands for that hour. I mastered that in about 28 days, but I couldn't shut my mind off. I couldn't. Like it was just running like amped up. 35 years of putting shit in my system. Yeah, putting shit in my system, man. I was a mess. I still like to say to you guys, I have 2 brain cells left. Once in a while, they connect. That might be more true than false, It's sad, but I'm grateful to be alive and forever grateful to NA. So NA got me. Like, in spite of myself, that's all I did was keep coming. And then, like you said, I just started to try to listen a little bit.
Right.
And I'd be petrified if there was the only chair left and there was a reading on it. I didn't want to sit on that chair because then I know I'd be stuck with the reading.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was real scared there. I mean, full of fear. Fear.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, because I knew the gig was up a long time ago, but I just didn't want to be around those people. I'm like, Jesus, after all this, I got to sit here like this. Ended up saving my life. I don't know. Like, I went to that. Funny story. Like I told you, I always kept my hood. I had a hoodie on with the Walmart coat and all swagged out from Wally World, and walked to that meeting. And I always looked down, and I knew what everybody's shoes were and what voice went with them. And I'd see them all smoking, and I was a smoker then. And after the meeting, and they'd be ripping a butt, and I'd say to myself, man, I'd like to just go over there and say hi, but I couldn't do it. And you know me today. Like, I'll talk to the stop sign if nobody's there to talk to. But that's
you were talking to her more than you talking to me on the fucking podcast.
Me and her are best friends. No, we're tight. But I'm saying, like, literally, I was, just scared to death. I was afraid if they got
what?
I don't know. I think I was afraid if they got to know the real me, I would be rejected.
Oh, okay.
You know, just from being like
just what you
not wanted for the longest time, and just being, I feel like if they get to know the real me and the shit that I did, that's not going to be good. Or maybe if they look at me, they might know who I really am inside. And and I remember stopping at this bodega at 105 because I never would stop and smoke a cigarette with those people.
I love the story, yeah.
So I'm walking, and I have the hoodie on, and I still haven't spoken to anybody at the Nooner. And I've been going for about 4 months now. And I'm walking, and every afternoon at 105, I'd be at this bodega, 1 block from the church. And I'd go in, and I'd say, can I have a pack of Pall Malls? And he would say whatever the price was then. And he would slide them under the counter in this foreign tongue, So this day, for whatever reason, same transaction, except the guy said in the foreign tongue, how are you today? Besides the $5.41 or whatever the cigarettes cost. And I said, what did you say? My hood went flying up, and I lost my shit.
And you flipped out on him?
Yeah, he just said, I just asked you how you were today. Something like that. I can't even do the accent. I was like, man, I just said, I'm good. I'm sorry. Like, it just threw me off. I hadn't talked to another human being except for the nut jobs in that place I was living in. And I said to the guy, I'm doing all right, because I was kicking. Like, I had a habit when I get out, so I still was feeling like shit, not sleeping good at night.
Right.
But I remember being up at 3:30 in the morning waiting for this thing to go down, and I hadn't thought about using drugs since 3:30 that morning till 1:05. Like, I don't know. That's never happened to me in my adult life since the first time, literally since the first time. Even from the first joint, I would always think about when the next one was. And if I wasn't doing it, I was dreaming about it or thinking about it. And I said, you know what? I'm all right. For whatever reason that guy asked me that day, it brought to my attention that I hadn't thought about using since I was up at 3:30. Now it's 1:05. I'd like to say the obsession stayed lifted, but it didn't. But that was just that, whatever it was, peace and quiet. And I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. If these guys can do it, I'm going to try. And I just said, I'm all in. Like, if I already know what's going to happen if it don't work. So the fear set in, like, it won't work for you. But that one moment might have been a moment of clarity, a God shot, whatever these people want to call it. But for me, that was a changing moment for me. That was a deciding factor. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it my all. Then I would sit at a seat looking for a seat with a reading. And then I would try to raise, while I read, raise my head up. Yeah, so they could hear me. And that's where the journey began. I never used again.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. February 4th, I'll have 8 years. It's incredible.
Great. That's
incredible.
So awesome, man. 35 years of activism.
Man, some of the shit that goes through, I'm like, did I really do that? Like, I just say to myself, like, what the hell? Wow. Yeah, it's crazy.
But that was a huge defining moment. I mean, so if somebody's, listening to this episode, and like, what would you tell them that you're doing on a daily basis, really, to keep what you have right now? Like, what do you really, you wake up, like, what's your routine to stay clean on a daily?
I like going to meetings now. I was thinking on the way down here, like, I don't really hang out with anybody that's not in NA. Like, all those people that I always thought, well, I didn't really have a lot of friends, but associates, they just fall by the wayside or die. And since I've been in recovery, I've been in 3 different areas. And that's been a challenge. In the first area that I switched from where I got clean was Florida. So it was like more uncomfortable than when I first got clean, because I literally would call back home and they're like, if you're staying there, you got to get some numbers and stuff. So I had 1 foot in and 1 foot out with a little more than a couple years clean. And I knew I was in trouble, because that was my lifeline up there. And that's what changed my life. And now I don't have it and nobody knows me. I would bounce into the men's meeting once a week. And then I was offered to stay down here for employment, and I knew I was in trouble, and I know how that ends for me. So I got plugged in down here. It was harder with clean time than it was, because, I mean, I was barely pissing straight when I'd walk to the nooner. Nothing fazed me. I just didn't look up. I didn't care. Now I knew better, and it was awkward, like to raise my hand and say, listen, I'm new in here, and I need people's numbers and stuff. Right. I don't know why it's so hard for me to do that, but I love people and I love hanging out, and I'll talk to anybody. But on a daily basis, I try to stay plugged in. I start my morning with a prayer, real simple one. I read the just for today, and then I keep it moving. If I can catch a meeting, I catch a meeting. Right. And I work at night, you know that. Yeah. And so I'll catch the nooner once in a while if I notice. And then sometimes life gets busy and I know, like, man, I'm a little squirrely. And then I realize, well, I ain't been to a meeting in 5 days. Like, I'm that addict that could go every day if I was afforded to. Right. And I used to do that. But life gets busy. And I've heard that story a million times, and I don't want to fall into that trap. So I never let it go longer than a week. Okay. You know, because I've just heard nightmarish stories. And hats off to the people that are clean that don't need it. But for me, I enjoy it. Right. You know, and sometimes a meeting for me is just like a dose of gratitude. Not only that I'm clean, but when I hear some of the sick and suffering stories and the trauma that they come in with, I'm like ready to grab the shit I'm whining about in the middle of the floor and take mine back and say, you know what, I'm good for the grace of God. Like, I'm a little ahead of them in this recovery path. Yeah. Because I remember them days. Yeah. They were painful. It would have been easier to go back to prison. You know, walking around for all that time in the dead of winter, it probably would have been easy. And that crossed my mind a bunch of times. So I was like, so on a daily, I love catching me in. It doesn't always happen, but I'd say 3 times a week. And then when I end the day, I just be like thankful. I just shoot a little prayer up like, thanks, man. I appreciate this extra day. You know, someone asked me the other day, why are you always happy? I'm like, I'm happy all the time because I don't feel happy sometimes in my head, but that must be how I come off. I said, are you shitting me? Yeah. Like, man, I'm alive. 6 feet up. I ain't pushing daisies. Like, it's a good day. No matter what happens, it's a good day. Yeah. And I try to give back a little bit.
No, you do. Most definitely. And you're not in that that insanity loop. You know what I'm saying? Like that, you know, we talk a lot about. Yeah. You and I have a lot of conversations about what we're going through in life, and we're, you know, we're both chefs, and it's tough because, you know, when we were in active addiction, we had the same job, and now we're in clean and we have this type of job. It's the same job, but you're used to working in a certain fashion when you're using. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You're used to those little idiosyncrasies of like having something on you, cooking, doing this, getting a hit, coming back, you know, like, and now we're clean. It's like you're learning how to work again, live again. And it's tough. It's not easy. Yeah. It's not easy. And we talk about that a lot, you know. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming in, man. It's good to see you. Yeah, man. And, you know, we're actually going to wrap this up, but there's a bonus episode of you that we're going to shoot after this one. So, all right.
Does dinner come with this?
It does.
Is this all
it's just free water, dude.
That's it. Can I get another water? If it's a bonus episode, I should get a bonus water.
If you you know, are listening to this episode or watching the YouTube channel, we really appreciate it. And we'll be back soon. Thanks for tuning in. Take care. Bye-bye.